In this decadent age, if one does not carefully observe these 16 factors that prevent the opportunity to practice the Dharma, they may appear to be practitioners with all the freedoms and advantages, considering themselves virtuous. However, in reality, they are controlled by these adverse factors. Although they may seem to practice the Dharma, they cannot enter the right path. Therefore, don't begin Dharma practice hastily. Instead, first, check carefully whether you have all the 34 aspects of the freedoms and advantages. If you have them all, rejoice and reflect on them over and over again. Now I have obtained such a precious human life with all the freedoms and advantages. I should not waste it, but strive to practice the Dharma. If you don't have all these freedoms and advantages, you should strive to acquire them. At all times, in all places, please strive to check whether you possess all the freedoms and advantages. Without examining in this way, even if one of these elements is lacking, you will not have an opportunity to practice the Dharma. This statement is very important. If you fail to examine in this way, assuming that even one of these elements is lacking, you will not have an opportunity to practice the Dharma. Even if only one of these elements is lacking, we cannot practice the Dharma. Don't assume that having a few freedoms and advantages means you can practice casually. Even if you have only one of the obstacles, you cannot practice the Dharma. We need to check carefully for any deficiencies in ourselves. A deficiency indicates that we haven't fully practiced the corresponding path of accumulation. In this case, we should earnestly practice the corresponding path of accumulation. Just like driving a car, even if you lack one necessary factor, you cannot drive. Without a key, you cannot drive. Without fuel, you cannot drive. If the road is not smooth, you cannot drive. If there's a big hole in the road that you can't pass, if you're sick today, or if your tire is flat, without any of these factors, you can't drive. To be able to drive today, you need to have many conditions in place. Even if one condition is missing, you can't drive. Nowadays, some people who cannot achieve spiritual attainments resort to divination, asking questions like, why hasn't my practice elevated recently? Why haven't I experienced any signs of progress? Why does my deity not appear? In reality, this is because you don't have all the necessary conditions. Among all the conditions, the 34 freedoms and advantages are the most crucial. Even if one factor is lacking, you cannot proceed to the subsequent stages of practice. Why do we need to cultivate merits? Because if your merits are insufficient, you cannot progress in your practice. In such cases, you should pause your practice and accumulate merits. If you know your conditions are insufficient, you should fix them. You don't need to resort to fortune-telling, asking questions like, when can I start driving? If you know a tire is flat, just fix it. Why bother with divination? Check these conditions carefully. If one of them is lacking, you should sincerely repent and fix it. When all the conditions are complete, you can begin your practice and soon experience signs of progress. For instance, suppose you were initially practicing normally in a spiritual community. However, your afflictions became uncontrollable. You started to lose your temper and have conflicts with your fellow practitioners, and then left. As a result, you gave up the subsequent stages of practice. Therefore, wise individuals, through their own experiences or observing others' experiences, can see that all these conditions are indispensable. There have been such individuals in our Dharma Centre. They have ingrained afflictions. Initially, they practiced normally in the community. But later, they couldn't control their afflictions and started to feel jealous, lose their temper, have conflicts with fellow practitioners, and harbour delusional thoughts towards the teacher. As a result, their afflictions gradually intensified and they had to leave. Even if they didn't leave, they couldn't bear it or endure their afflictions. The subsequent stages of practice became impossible for them. If you generate such disturbing emotions here, you will do the same in any spiritual community. We must follow the steps of practice. Examine these 34 aspects of freedoms and advantages carefully. If you do, I believe you will soon resonate with the Dharma. Among the 18 freedoms and advantages, the 8 freedoms are not hard to obtain. For example, not being born in the 3 lower realms, or the long life heavenly realm. The 4 freedoms for human beings are not hard to possess either. However, it is rare to find someone with all the 10 advantages. If you possess all the 10 advantages, you will progress swiftly in spiritual practice. Let's analyze the 5 individual advantages. For most Buddhists, obtaining a human life, possessing complete sense faculties, and being born in a central land is not difficult. However, if one has a conflicting lifestyle and lacks faith in the Dharma, they possess only 3 of the 5 individual advantages. Many Chinese people cannot enter the Buddhist path and engage in Dharma practice because they have a conflicting lifestyle and don't believe in the Dharma. Even if one possesses 3 individual advantages but holds wrong views or lacks faith in the Dharma, they too cannot study the Buddha's teachings. Even if one possesses 4 individual advantages but has a conflicting lifestyle or lacks faith in the Dharma, they don't have the fortune to study the Dharma. Especially for those who have a conflicting lifestyle, they may not have committed grave sins such as slandering the Dharma or undermining Buddhism. However, if their thoughts, words and deeds are negative, or if their practice, sutra recitation, circumambulation, pilgrimage to sacred mountains and other activities are solely for obtaining benefits in this lifetime, then even if they are called virtuous or wise, they have a conflicting lifestyle. If one's spiritual practice is solely for obtaining benefits in this lifetime, such as thinking, I want to achieve enlightenment quickly in this very life, such thoughts are problematic. At times, you should observe yourself. If you think, I want to become a great master, are you motivated by a desire for fame? Are you truly for the sake of benefiting sentient beings? Do you not care about reputation at all? If someone slanders you, will you get angry? It is not easy to guide sentient beings. When guiding sentient beings, if disciples don't listen to your instructions or slander you, will you lose your aspiration? Will you harbour strong anger towards the disciples? Such situations are tricky. Here it says, Even if one is called virtuous or wise, but seeks solely the benefits in this lifetime, they still have a conflicting lifestyle. It is hard to determine whether one is working for the benefits of this life. Some people may appear to work for the benefit of others. For example, some people devote their entire lives to serving sentient beings, but deep down they do it for themselves. This is the situation for those who haven't eradicated self-grasping. They haven't observed their motivations clearly. The spiritual practice solely for one's own benefit is problematic. We practice the Dharma to attain liberation. Initially, we should aspire to seek the Dharma because we come here to strive for the path and liberation. The aspiration for seeking the path should be present. However, practicing the path is different from seeking it. When practicing the Dharma, we should not remain in the stage of seeking it. Once we truly begin our practice, we should follow the teacher's instructions and gradually let go of attachment to the world and the Dharma. Yesterday, we learned that we are patients, the teacher is a skilled doctor, and the Dharma is the prescription and medicine. Therefore, we should not be too attached to the Dharma either. Our purpose is to attain liberation and heal our afflictions. In the beginning, you are sick, and you should seek the path. This means finding a skilled doctor and getting the right prescription and medicine. This is what we need to seek. However, once you start taking medicine, you should not continue seeking medicine. Your goal is to heal your illness. Therefore, seeking the path and practicing the path are different. When practicing the Dharma, we should not be too attached to the medicine. You should understand that we aim to heal illness, not seek medicine. Please take time to understand Dharma practice. Let's analyze the 5 circumstantial advantages. If a Buddha has come and taught the Dharma, and the Dharma is available, but you haven't entered the Buddhist path, then you lack one of these advantages. Since you haven't entered the Buddhist path, you won't be guided by a compassionate spiritual teacher. As a result, you lack 2 of these advantages. With only 3 of the 5 circumstantial advantages, it is impossible to succeed in Dharma practice. Some people have entered the Buddhist path and been accepted as disciples by a teacher, but their minds are often unsettled. Once they lose interest in the Dharma, it is unrealistic to restrain them with external forces. Eventually, their mask will fall off and their true face will appear. If you have entered the Buddhist path but only superficially receive some Dharma teachings, you cannot be considered a genuine Buddhist. Many people believe that obtaining a refuge certificate, getting a Dharma name, and receiving empowerments and teachings from a guru makes them authentic Buddhists. However, this is not necessarily the case. Why? Because you haven't integrated the teachings of Mahayana and Hinayana into your actions, and you haven't developed this faith. Therefore, even though you may consider yourself a Buddhist, you may not necessarily be a genuine Buddhist. A real Buddhist should at least begin by cultivating virtues and being content with fewer desires. Only those who have started practicing the Buddha's teachings can be considered Buddhists. We should recognize our mistakes and rectify them. First, we shall restrain our greed and be content with fewer desires. By doing so, we have begun actual practice. We should not easily get grumpy. If we do, it indicates a strong desire or deep attachment to something, which triggers our anger. You need to find out why you get angry. Anger arises due to excessive attachment to something. Generally speaking, it is because of greed. After greed arises, if you can let it go, despite not getting what you desire, you won't become angry. If you become angry, it shows you are very attached to that thing. Whatever you are attached to, if you don't get it, anger will arise. Generally speaking, if you can let go when you don't get something, it indicates that your greed is not very strong. However, if you are very concerned about your reputation, career, or something else, and someone harms these things, you will become angry and harbour resentment towards them. If you have intense anger, it indicates that you are too attached to something. Those who have strong anger must sincerely repent. Otherwise, you will fall into the 3 lower realms. Those who truly embark on the path to liberation must understand that the entire samsara is meaningless and cultivate a genuine determination to be free from it. To practice the Mahayana path, one must generate a genuine bodhicitta. At the very least, you should have unwavering faith in the 3 jewels and not abandon them even if your life is in danger. Without this determination, merely reciting scriptures or wearing monastic robes does not necessarily mean you have entered the Dharma. Therefore, it is crucial to understand these freedoms and advantages accurately and check whether you have them. Those who sincerely wish to enter the path to liberation must understand that the entire samsara is meaningless. This is what I refer to as repetition. Engaging in meaningless activities over and over again. The sufferings of sentient beings arise from their karmic habits. Take time to contemplate these sufferings. The preliminary practices of the Great Perfection is primarily intended to guide those capable of practicing the path to liberation, the Mahayana path, and even the Great Perfection. The earlier part of this treatise primarily discusses the cultivation of renunciation. Cultivating renunciation is crucial because we must first understand that samsara is meaningless. No matter what we do, as we repeat it, we will believe it is necessary and happy. For example, our habit of lust arises from the repetition throughout countless kalpas. Living beings started with spontaneous birth. Then, egg birth and womb birth gradually came into being. Womb birth is a karmic habit we have repeated for countless kalpas. We consider it our instinct as if it is necessary. In reality, it just arises from repetition without anything special. As we repeat it, we tend to believe it is normal and necessary, just like eating. All activities emerge from growing thoughts and habits of greed. They are all meaningless. What meaning is there? What is meaningful? None at all. Nothing in the world is meaningful. If you meditate in this way, you will let go of attachment. The 16 unfree states are described in terms of specific circumstances. To obtain these freedoms and advantages, we need to practice the path of accumulation. Without completing the path of accumulation, we cannot attain the 8 or 16 freedoms, nor the 10 advantages. That is why the Buddha taught us to observe the 5 precepts first to obtain a human life, and then practice the 10 virtuous actions to acquire the freedoms, advantages, and complete sense faculties. By practicing the 10 virtuous actions, we can also have the fortune to hear the Dharma and learn from qualified spiritual teachers. Moreover, if we have abundant positive karma and few negative habits, we can start Dharma practice. If one has immense negative karma, as mentioned earlier, overwhelmed by immense negative karma, and controlled by others, they lack freedom. In China today, many people are controlled by others. They serve others all day long, without freedom. They barely make ends meet. The 8 incompatible propensities that lack freedom include having a wicked character, lacking faith, enjoying doing evil deeds, etc. As time goes by, people will gradually delight in evil actions. These situations arise because we haven't properly observed the 5 precepts and practiced the 10 virtuous actions. Without observing the 5 precepts and practicing the 10 virtuous actions, we would not have these favourable conditions. Why did the Buddha teach the human and heavenly vehicle? It was to help us attain the 8 freedoms and 10 advantages, and free us from the 8 incompatible propensities and 8 intrusive circumstances that obstruct freedom. This allows us to have the opportunity to learn and practice the Buddha's teachings. Reflecting on how difficult it is to obtain the freedoms and advantages through analogies. It is very rare for a blind turtle coming up from the bottom of an ocean to put its head through the hole of a floating yoke tossed around by huge waves. The Buddha said that obtaining a human life is even rarer than this. In other words, imagine the entire universe as a vast ocean. On its surface there is a yoke, a piece of wood that can be fixed around the horns of ploughing oxen. The yoke has a hole in it. It drifts around with the waves, and it never stays in the same place, even for an instant. At the bottom of the ocean there is a blind turtle who rises to the surface once every 100 years. It is extremely unlikely for the yoke and the turtle to meet. The inanimate yoke doesn't have the intention to look for the turtle, and the blind turtle cannot see the yoke. If the yoke were to stay still in one place, they might have a chance to meet, but it is constantly on the move. If the turtle were to swim on the ocean's surface frequently, they might also have a chance to meet. However, it only surfaces once every 100 years. Hence, the chances of the yoke and the turtle meeting each other are extremely small. Nevertheless, by sheer chance, the turtle might slip its neck into the yoke. Obtaining a human life with all the freedoms and advantages is even rarer than this. Nagarjuna imparted this teaching in his advice to King Sarabhadra. It is extremely rare for a turtle to enter a yoke floating on a vast sea. Even rarer is the chance for an animal to be reborn as a human. Therefore, Your Majesty, practice the Dharma to attain supreme fruition. Shantideva also said, "Just like a blind turtle's head enters the whole of a yoke floating on a vast ocean, obtaining a human life is even rarer." Moreover, in sutras such as the Nirvana Sutra, there are analogies like throwing beans onto a smooth wall, where the beans cannot adhere, and piling beans on the tip of a needle, where not even one can stay. Therefore, we should realize that it is extremely rare to obtain a human life. The Nirvana Sutra uses analogies such as throwing beans onto a smooth wall where they cannot adhere, and piling beans on the tip of a needle where not even one can stay, to illustrate the rarity of obtaining a human life. In the three realms, in our Saha world, the human population is less than 1 in 5 million compared to all sentient beings. Just by reflecting on this, you will find how rare it is to be born as a human. It is even rarer to be born as a human with the opportunity to hear the Dharma. Less than 1% of humanity has this fortune. Among those who hear the Dharma, fewer than 1% encounter the authentic Dharma. Among those who learn the authentic Dharma, fewer than 1% have the guidance of qualified teachers. This is indeed the situation.